After years of talking about the benefits of living overseas, and in particular, what I call my trifecta lifestyle, where you rent or own homes in 3 different places that you go between, whether it's an equal 4 months in each place or whether you modify it and make your own schedule. There are great tax benefits from this. There are great lifestyle benefits in many cases from this. But families have asked, how do I do this with my family? How do I do this with children? And as we've increasingly been working with families and even larger families here at Nomad Capitalist, I'm going to once again answer the question, how do I live the trifecta lifestyle with a family? I'm Andrew Henderson, and here at Nomad Capitalist, we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where they're treated best, including with their own trifecta strategy to reduce their taxes, diversify their assets, protect their assets overseas, but things like owning homes, and always having more than one option. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. Now, the trifecta strategy is something that I came up with a couple of years ago to describe a lifestyle where you don't just live in one place. Okay? Because if you look at it from a tax planning point of view, just as one angle, not everyone wants to go and live in Monaco or in Dubai or in some tax-free place. Now, there are other countries that have lump sum tax programs, territorial tax, they have tax exemptions, some time-limited programs where you pay very little tax for the first 5 years, 6 years, 10 years. So it's not just tax-free countries that we're looking at, but particularly for people like Americans, not all those tax exemptions work as cleanly as they claim they do. And so, for people like me, I like the idea of being in different places around the world. I think that every part of the world has something to offer. Many people, if they're going to leave their country, they want to get the best of different places. They might like Asia for part of the year, but it's a cultural shock for some people. So then they want to go, back to the part of the world where they're from, maybe Mexico if they're from the United States or Canada. But then eventually they kind of get tired of that. They want Europe. And so the trifecta was created in response to, years ago, people would say that the only way to be a nomad was to drag a suitcase behind you, and you would just go from place to place to place. And so when I'm asked about, how does the trifecta work for families, to me the trifecta is already one step ahead of the game because you are establishing homes. Again, you can either rent them or you can own them, in which case you have more control, and you are traveling between them at your leisure. Now, you could have homes theoretically in 3 very tax-friendly places to where the need to be moving from a tax mitigation standpoint would not be as great. So, if you had a home in Dubai and one year you decided you wanted to spend 9 months of the year there, well, you're not going to have all the other tax issues that you would if you decided to spend 9 months a year in a home in Spain, for example. Okay, so everyone's trifecta is going to be a little bit different. But the idea behind this from a family perspective is you may only have to take 2 flights a year. Now, many people are going to, let's say you have 4 months in Mexico. You're going to go to Mexico City, or if you're a family, maybe you want to go to a safer place like a Merida, for example. You're going to be in Merida, you're going to have your normal life there. But, on the weekends, you might want to go somewhere. You might want to go to Mexico City. You might want to go to Cancun. You might want to go check out a new country like Belize. Right? You might want to, go back and visit your parents in Vancouver. You might want to go down and check out some of the real estate we've talked about in Colombia. Right? And so you're not going to necessarily stay in Merida or stay in Mexico City or stay in Kuala Lumpur or Dubai or whatever the place is for that entire 4 months. You're going to go out and you're going to do stuff. Now, that's certainly up to you, and so if you have a family, you might want to choose places where you just love being there and you have everything that you need. I've talked about cities with consumer conveniences. Asian cities in particular have this. If you like, having all the shopping options, all the dining options, if you like your Starbucks, then a lot of Asian cities are going to have a leg up. Certainly some of the larger Latin cities like Mexico City are going to be good. Europe, if you're going to some of the more friendly countries that are easier to get into, they're not going to have as many options. And so I think you can choose, how you structure your life. But understand that if you're setting up shop in Montenegro, there's probably more traveling that's going to happen to get the stuff that you want and need versus if you're living in Bangkok, for example, where you have access to a lot of stores and shops and there's e-commerce and there's just a lot more going on. And so you can craft a trifecta that allows you to stay more settled in those places Obviously, not everyone wants consumer conveniences. Not everyone wants to live in a big city. Not everyone wants malls and coffee shops. Some people want their trifecta to be in rather rural places. Some people are going to split it up to where they're getting their rural for 4 months of a year, and then they have 2 other urban environments. I mean, you can do really whatever you want. But from a family perspective, I do have an increasing number of families that I'm working with who are already doing it. In fact, I have families who are literally dragging a suitcase behind them. And I'll tell you what they do in a moment. But to me, the trifecta is a pretty straightforward strategy, because if you live in your home country and you're taking vacations a couple times a year, let's say you live in Boston, and I have families where they say, we try and take 1 trip every quarter, and we put the 3 kids on the plane with us, and we go on this trip to St. Lucia, or we'll go to Portugal, or we'll go to Hong Kong, and we're doing 4 of those every year for 7 or 10 days each. To me, that's already more work than the trifecta, but it seems simple because you know how Boston works, you understand how that works, and it just seems like, well, that's normal. You take a vacation. Well, what's the difference between that and every January 5th, you take a flight from Mexico City to Bangkok, and then every, June 5th, you take a flight from Bangkok to your home in Portugal, for example, and then, you do it to get back to Mexico City. Whatever your system is, I guess it's 3 flights. But to me, it's not really that much. And so maybe it's longer. Maybe if you are living in Boston, your vacations are not as far afield. But one thing that I would suggest if you're a family is maybe your trifecta is tighter. Maybe, for me, just an example, for me, it may not be family friendly, but for me, in terms of a European city, most cities in Europe aren't that big. Certainly you've got London. Okay, Paris is pretty big, although it doesn't even feel like a mega city. But you don't really have many cities that feel like a mega city in Europe, maybe Moscow, London. But for me, just a normal European city, Belgrade, for example, I like the value. I like that it's a little bit different. It's not Western. You don't have all the nonsense that comes to the West. I like it. Do I want to live there full time? No. What don't they have? Beach. Where do they have beach? Montenegro, 45 minutes away. I think both of those places are relatively friendly. If you prefer Albania, I guess you could fly down to the beaches of Albania. Not sure how that would go over if you're telling everyone that. But you could keep a tighter trifecta. I know some people, they like the idea of living in South Korea, Japan. They like that Northern Asia vibe. It's a bit more stable. It's a bit more developed. But then they also like spending their winters in somewhere like Phuket or in Penang in Malaysia or something like that. And so you could do an Asian trifecta. You could do a Latin trifecta. I mean, you don't have to be on 3 different continents. You could gain the lifestyle diversification and potential tax benefits of doing a tighter trifecta overseas. What I would also suggest for families, and how you logistically do this is, from 0 to 5 years old, 0 to 6 years old with your kids, they're probably not going to school. Now, I guess in many Western societies, kids are going to preschool, it seems like, from 3 weeks old. I never did that, and most people I know didn't do that, but it seems like now that's the thing. And it's a government policy that by 18 months or 2 years old, they want your governments in their little indoctrination centers to teach them what they're doing. So if you're willing to do kind of the old school, 30, 35 years ago, how we were raised, and just keep them at home, teach them how to read, teach them the basics from 0 to 5, 0 to 6, you've got that time where you can just be traveling. Obviously, you've got a little bit of downtime when a kid is born. Okay, you got to maybe stay in one place. And so having a very tax-friendly piece to the trifecta is probably a good idea for anyone, especially a family, in case you just need to stay somewhere for a while. But you've got a lot of room there. Once the kids go into school, what I've seen is people will have a nanny or a helper for the entire age of the child. So that could even be preschool. They'll have a helper. And then they'll also get a tutor. I've talked about this numerous times, the idea of having a tutor. You can hire people. People talk about, you have to go to an international school. Some of these international schools, could be $30,000, $40,000 a year per child. I think you could hire someone pretty competent from somewhere in the world to have the experience of traveling around with you and teaching an international curriculum of your choice certainly for that price. And if you are a 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur, then you're going to save a lot of money in taxes that can go to pay for that. Certainly you could do 9 months in a place and send your kid to the international school and then just do 3 months somewhere else. It's not a trifecta, but you could do that. But I think the idea of the tutor works, and then the tutor travels with you. Now, one thing that I've seen people do is they'll often hire helpers, particularly here in Asia, from Indonesia or the Philippines, for example. These passports are not very strong, and so I might look at finding people, if you're going to be traveling on a global basis, who already have, let's say, a U.S. visa or a Schengen visa that will help them get into a lot more countries, or they're from a country with a bit stronger passport. So Ukraine, Romania, parts of Eastern Europe, perhaps parts of Latin America, Mexico, great passport. If you can find people from these parts of the world, Russia, depending on where you're going, could be a good passport. If you can find people from these places, then that's going to make it easier for you to travel with your household staff. There are certain residence programs, again, more focused on Asia, that allow you to add a household staff member to your residence application. They don't have to qualify on their own. That can be helpful if you want to have more, one base. But I think once you do all those logistical things, it's just a matter of, number one, doing it. It's a matter of understanding that it can be done. It's a matter of, if you're trying to live globally by, again, taking trips where you're from, you're already putting in more effort than a trifecta. And it's also just a matter of making sure you know what everybody wants. The reason I think the trifecta actually works well for families is because everyone's getting their proper space. You have your homes in each of the three places. If you have kids, they have bedrooms. I personally prefer owning properties overseas. It's a great way to get residence permits, get citizenships. It's a great way to keep things, stable, because landlords can cancel contracts, Airbnbs can fall through, they can be not as described. If you own your three properties, now everyone knows what they're getting. Your kids keep their stuffed animals or their books or whatever there. You know where you're going, so that your kids and your family members all have their friends in each place that are looking forward to meeting with them. There's a certain stability to the trifecta that other global citizen lifestyle plans don't really have. And so I think that by doing this, it's actually a lot easier for families, as long as you cover the helper angle, if that's what you need, and then the tutor angle, once the kids get to that age. And I think that you can actually do so in a way that saves you a lot of money, and that this model actually works a lot better for families than many other ways of living if you're trying to be international. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.